Today I'm sharing my picks for the best eyeshadow palettes of 2021. Welcome in, I'm Kimberly. This is Pretty Over 50, where we talk everything makeup, skincare, and style for the over 50 woman. Isn't this the video we all look forward to every single year? The best eyeshadow palette picks. For me, my top eyeshadow palette picks this year kind of made me laugh, and I'll be sharing more about that in a few minutes. If you're new here, I'm so glad you stopped by. Welcome in. I hope you'll consider subscribing while you're here and make sure you click that notification bell so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. When I'm thinking about my best of videos, what I try to focus on are the products that I would say that you just can't miss with. If we were girlfriends and having lunch, these are the products that I would really recommend that you run out and buy if you're looking for that particular item. When I'm putting together a list like this, I'm really focusing on what are the products that I feel like are totally a good value, you can't go wrong with them, and that I think are really that good. Spoiler alert for my palette picks this year, every single one of them, with almost the exception of one, are neutral palettes. I know, if you're a color girl, this is going to be such a huge disappointment for you, but if you love neutrals, girl, you're in the right place. I do love a pop of color from time to time, but when I think about the eyeshadow palettes that are a good investment, that stand the test of time, that really work for so many skin types and skin tones, neutral palettes really fit into that category. We're going to launch right into my picks today, and as always, all products that I mentioned today will be listed and linked below, so super easy for you to find. And with that, let's hop into it. Putting together my picks this year was super easy. I really didn't even have to think about it. That's because there's been a few palettes that I've come across that are just standouts that work so well consistently day after day, week after week. Interestingly enough, it's almost split 50-50 between drugstore and high-end. I'm going to share my two larger palette picks right now, and they're only two. And then I'm going to launch into the smaller palettes because I've got lots of explaining to do about those. My two absolute favorite larger palette picks for this year is the Stone Cold Fox palette from ColourPop and the Natasha Denona Glam Palette. No surprise for either one of these. In my opinion, the Stone Cold Fox palette is an absolute standout, particularly if you're looking for shadows for more mature skin. This palette has it all. It is so complete. The formulas are so beautiful. The color selections are excellent. If you only wanted to own one palette, I could say this could really fit the bill for you. This Stone Cold Fox palette really hit it out of the park, particularly for those who prefer a little bit cooler eyeshadow looks. And saying that, I can tell you that there are plenty of neutral shades in here that work well for almost any skin tone. You have rosy tones here, neutral tones here, gray tones here, another cool line here, more neutral tones here, and a bit of a mauve shift towards the end. This palette is really so very good. The formulas are terrific. The shimmers are great. There's only a couple of shimmers in here that I think are a little bit too glittery for me, but other than that, there are so many wonderful shades in this palette. You could put together a different look every day of the year and not duplicate anything. That's how versatile this palette is. My high-end choice for larger palettes for 2021 is the Natasha Denona Glam Palette. Oh my gosh, did this hit the scene and make quite a splash? I'm not even sure it came out in 2021, did it? Who remembers? I love this palette. The colorway in this palette is spot on for me. The formulas are terrific. Everything about this palette really works for me. But I want to say one thing. This is not the best formula that I tried from Natasha Denona this year. I'll be sharing more about that in a few minutes. However, this palette is absolutely gorgeous. You can put together so many different looks with this palette, and complete looks at that, because you have a light color going all the way down to very dark tones to deepen up your look. Lots of one and done choices in this. The formula is excellent. The colorway is beautiful. I think this is an extremely sophisticated and workable palette, particularly for mature skin. Definitely my top pick for a high-end larger palette this year, the Natasha Denona Glam Palette. Now we're going to hop into smaller palettes, and I have so many to share, and I have so much to say almost about each and every one of them. One tiny little quad that I fell in love with this year is from Charlotte Tilbury. This is the Star Aura palette. Oh my gosh, the first time I used this eyeshadow palette, I was over the moon. These formulas are so yummy and so delicious, particularly for my very mature lids. Here's the interesting thing about the Charlotte Tilbury eyeshadow formula. It's very different to me than other eyeshadow formulas in that it's more of a wash of color or a wash of sparkle or a wash of glimmer and glow on your eyelids. My experience with Charlotte Tilbury is that it's really hard to go overboard with her products. In other words, you don't go zero to clown in 60 seconds with her product line because they're very, very subtle, very, very well crafted to just give a beautiful glow on the skin, regardless of whether you're talking about eyeshadow colors or face products. I think that her product line is one of the best that I've tried for mature skin because of the subtlety and the elegance of her formulas. This particular palette has just delighted me, and every time I work with it, it is fun. I enjoy it. The look is glorious. They last all day. And I'll tell you what, on my eyelids, these shadows do not crease. And I mean, they do not crease. There's something magical about this formula that is so workable for my very mature lids. This was the first eyeshadow palette that I picked up from Charlotte Tilbury. And you know what? I tried a couple of more and I can't say I didn't like them as well. There's something about this formula that really works for me. The other formulas I tried really had a lot of sparkle in them and created a glitter bomb on my face in a few instances. I didn't like that at all. It seems as though that she has a couple of different formulas, one that's a little less sparkly, and then she slips in these really super sparkly shadows in some of her quads and in some of her palettes. I wish that she would put together a line specifically for the less glittery shadows so it was easier to determine whether you're going to be getting a glitter bomb or if you're going to get a nice glorious shadow that's just going to look so beautiful and so glowy on the eyelids. Absolutely one of my favorite small palettes of the year, the Charlotte Tilbury Star Aura palette. And the good news is it's not sold out. You can still get it. This is a Charlotte Tilbury face palette. It's the Instant Look of Love in a Palette Pretty Blushed Beauty palette. The reason I want to share about this right now is that it ties in with the Star Aura palette. This is a palette that I picked up in the big sale season in November. And these eyeshadows right here are very similar to the Star Aura palette formula. In other words, they give that beautiful glow across the eyelids without being overly glittery. You can see the shadows right here. They're so very pretty. The reason I wanted to shout this palette out is because of the eyeshadow formulas. However, I have used this palette a couple of times on my face. It is so very pretty. And you know what? It's so expensive. Really, these face palettes are a pretty penny. But I did want to shout out this particular one because this eyeshadow formula is really good. If you love face palettes and if you love this type of formula eyeshadow, just a beautiful wash of color, a nice shimmer without a bunch of glitter, this is a really good choice. Now I want to talk about a couple of very, very affordable 5-pan palettes from Wet n Wild. I mean, what a splash these made on the makeup scene. And you know what? It was well deserved. These are really, really good. Wet n Wild came out with this line, I think about mid-year, or maybe it was towards the first of the year. I can't even remember now. There are several colorways in this line, and I actually have several that are more colorful. The two that I'm going to show today, I think are really can't go wrong colorways for so many different skin tones and skin types. This one especially, this is Walking on Eggshells. Wet n Wild has had the Walking on Eggshells colorway for a long time in their line, and they keep redoing it into little quads and then quints, and I think they even have a 10-pen palette. Maybe I'm making that up. But I kind of remember they do. This little 5-pan palette is so very good. And they're so affordable. I think these are maybe $5 or something like that. You can see how glorious the colorway is right here. And these formulas are lovely to work with. They're blendable, they're not patchy, they're not too powdery, they're just lovely. One thing I want to point out about this palette is this lid shade right here, this kind of champagne-y pink shade. This is probably one of the prettiest lid shades I have ever worked with. It is worth it to get the palette just for that lid shade. I'll often pull out this palette just for that lid shade to finish up a look. It really is so very pretty. It's just the right amount of shimmer and glow on your lid without being glittery. Absolutely love the Walking on Eggshells palette from Wet n Wild. So beautiful, so affordable. The next little 5-pan palette from Wet n Wild I want to shout out is Petalette. This is the one palette that has a little bit more color. So if you're a color girl, here it is. This palette is delightful in the colorways. You can see that it has a rich, deep purple tone, a beautiful transition color, and then some beautiful shimmer shades right here. This palette is so pretty and so very good. Here are the swatches, and you can see that the tones really go from very, very dark to very, very light. So it's easy to put together a full look. The wonderful thing about this palette, and probably most of the palettes I'm talking about today, is there's lots of choices in here for a one and done. This beautiful purple shade right here, a little heavier on the lid and blended into the crease, so very pretty. And any of these shimmer shades right here for a one and done would be gorgeous on the lids. Two very good, very affordable Wet n Wild palettes, the Walking on Eggshells and the Petalette. Now I want to talk about two 5-pan palettes from Natasha Denona, a little bit higher end than the Wet n Wild, but oh my gosh, they're so very good. This is the Mini Nude palette, and I have used the heck out of this since I picked it up, I think in the summer. This is such a beautiful palette. If you like nudes and you like small palettes, this is your ticket right here. Of course, the formulas in these palettes are excellent. Still not the best that I've tried from Natasha Denona. I'll talk about that in a minute, but they're really, really good. All these formulas I'm talking about today are really good, and you can't go wrong with any of them. This particular palette leans more towards the bronzy color tones than the Wet n Wild Walking on Eggshells. That's more strictly neutral. But you can see how pretty those colors are. And again, lots of choices for one and done. If you enjoy a neutral look, I can tell you what, this palette will get you there. The next palette I want to share is the Natasha Denona Mini Retro Palette. And I forgot, this is another colored palette. See, you're getting a bonus. 2 colored palettes in one video. This palette is so fun and so good when you're looking for something a little bit special for your eye look. I love these little palettes. The colors work so beautifully together, and playing with the formulas is always a treat. This palette is a beautiful combination of pinks and grays, which I think is such a beautiful look. These formulas look great on the eyelids and really work for my more mature lids. You can see right here, of course, there's plenty of one and done choices, but when you want a full look with a deep crease color and a smoke shade, this works so very beautifully. This is a super fun palette to play with. If you like playing with eyeshadow palettes, this one is really a treat. I have another 6-pan palette line from the drugstore I want to shout out today. This is the Essence 6-pan palette line, and oh my gosh, for a drugstore price, and I'm talking really reasonable drugstore, like $3 or $4, these palettes are so very good. I have used 2 so far. I think I have 4 total. This one is Mauve It, and I've also tried Taupe It Up. I would show you Taupe It Up. I can't find it. I have looked everywhere. I think the cat must have took it. I can show you the Mauve It palette here. It is so very pretty, and surprisingly, these formulas are really good. They're not chalky, they blend in, they're just lovely to work with. You can see the color range here, which is really exceptional for a very affordable drugstore eyeshadow palette. I did a look with this palette a couple of weeks ago. It was so very pretty. I'll go ahead and post it up here if you want to take a look at it. I really enjoyed working with the Taupe It Up palette and this Mauve It. I will be featuring the other 2 colorways in upcoming Get Ready With Me, so I can't speak to the formulas in those yet because I haven't used them. But what I can tell you is that the Mauve It palette and the Taupe It Up palette from Essence, so very good and such a great buy. Now I want to finish up with what I think is the best eyeshadow formula I have tried all year, and I'm not kidding you. I'm talking really good. These are the Natasha Denona Glam Face Palettes. Of course, these are face palettes. They're not strictly eyeshadow palettes, but I'll tell you what, the eyeshadow formulas in these palettes are the best I've tried from Natasha Denona or anyone all year long. It's the kind of formula where I'm excited to work with it. That's how beautiful they are on the eyes. These palettes come in 2 colorways, the dark and the light. I have used them both. I love them both. I actually did a full video reviewing these palettes. I'll go ahead and list it up here if you didn't see that. and you're interested. I love these palettes. Are they pricey? They really are, but gosh, they're so very good. I enjoy these eyeshadow formulas like nothing else. I'm actually wearing the dark on my eyes today. If you want to see swatches from both the palettes, go ahead and check out the video where I reviewed them, and you can see the difference in the colorways. There's something about this formula that she really stepped up her game on this one. They blend in so beautifully, they're rich, they're creamy, they just look so good on the skin. The added treat with these two palettes is that the blush and the highlight tone in so well with the eyeshadows that when I put together a look from these palettes, I get more comments from you guys than anything else. Let me go ahead and swatch a couple of the shimmer shades from these two palettes. Here's a shimmer shade from the light palette. Here's a shimmer shade from the dark palette. I mean, how beautiful are those? And they feel just so creamy, and they stay and they lay down gorgeous. They're just beautiful shadows. I have worked with both these palettes a lot because I love them so much. The only complaint that I have about these palettes, and I don't even know if it's a reasonable complaint or not, is that there's not a matte light shade to put down on my lid before I start in. I simply grab another palette and put kind of an eggshell wash of color in a matte formula on my lids before I start with these palettes. Other than that, I can say that I am so thrilled with both the eyeshadow formulas in these palettes, and the blush and highlight are just really a bonus. So absolutely my favorite eyeshadow formulas the entire year long, the Natasha Denona Glam Face palettes, both the dark and the light. Those are my eyeshadow picks for 2021. Gosh, that was a lot of fun to talk about those beautiful palettes. I hope you found it fun, useful, and helpful. If you did, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, make sure you smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. You guys know it just tickles me when you take a few minutes out of your day to spend it with me. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you. Again, I'm Kimberly. This is Pretty Over 50, where we talk everything makeup, skincare, and style for the over 50 woman. Make it a great day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye now.